Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show, everybody. We're all fun and games on the morning show here, but there are some times where we need to get serious. We're going to kind of shift tones right now and talk about a pretty serious subject right now, something that is very important that you may not think about. We're talking about kind of social media and how it's used in a different way other than showing off your cat or your next food item that you want to make everyone sure that you know that you're at Olive Garden or something. Guys, joining me on the couch is the U.S. Agency for Global Media's Chief Strategy Officer, Dr. Haroon Ullah. And then we have Deeanna Price, the events coordinator for UCCD. Dr. Haroon Ullah is doing a special talk in cooperation with the Westminster College about stopping the next world war. So thank you, you two, for joining us on the Mountain Morning Show couch. We are kind of getting hefty here. First thing, before we get to you, Doctor, kind of get into the meats and potatoes. Deeanna, you are the events coordinator for UCCD. What is this talk that you guys are putting on?
Okay, so this is part of our John and Marcia Price World Affairs Lecture Series.
Okay.
And this has been going on in our organization since 2004. Mm-hmm. And we invite just a broad array of lecturers to come to Utah and talk about their expertise, what their knowledge is. And so this particular lecture
yes.
Really is a very serious subject
yes.
That's heavily involved in foreign policy. And so I feel like we're very privileged to have Dr. Ullah to come and help us navigate what's going on the internet and how are people using the tools, you know, in a nefarious way, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, totally. And as I was saying, you know, social media, we think it to be, you know, oh, here's my cat. Oh, here's this, you know, this pumpkin mac and cheese I just had. But unfortunately, you know, with this last political presidential election that we had, the whole Russia investigation and whether Russia meddled in the election, and that led to, did Russia go on Facebook and start advertising on Facebook to sway people? So I think we should start jumping into the meat potatoes there.
Sure.
Dr. Ullah, thank you so much again for coming on. And again, your speech is titled "Stopping the Next World War," and you know, it may not necessarily be on the scale of, you know, World War I or World War II, but you know, social media as a whole different world that people maybe not be used to. So let's start off, man. What is going on with social media these days?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited, and working with the Utah Council for Public Diplomacy. I'm really excited, and this is a subject I'm really passionate about. And the way I like to think about it is that, you know, it may not be World War II or World War III, but it is the new battlefield, as I call it, is the information battlefield. Yeah. And there's no borders on this battlefield, right? And as you mentioned, the elections. So what we find is that countries, both like Russia and China, and then also non-state actors like these hateful extremist groups like ISIS, they are using social media in a way that I call the weaponization of information. They've taken sort of these tools to reach targeted audiences in a way to spread disinformation and misinformation, to spread lies, oftentimes propaganda, and we sometimes, as you sort of rightly pointed out, we didn't realize how big the effects are of this. I mean, they're pouring in tons of money and resources, and they're getting very real results. And so my work has been, and I work at the U.S. Agency for Global Media, which is the Voice of America and Radio Free Europe. It's sort of congressionally funded. We want to be on the front lines, both to protect Americans, but also to tell an independent, fact-based story to the rest of the world.
So with hearing that, Deeanna, how important is it for you to get that word out from Dr. Ullah?
I think it's very important. And I think sometimes if we're not involved in these, you know, schemes where recruitment and, you know, if we're just living our peaceful lives and we stay uninvolved, that does us a disservice. We need to know what people are using as a tool for their own agendas, which can turn around and hurt us, you know, if we're not being watchful and being aware.
Well, and then I think it's, you know, on a smaller scale to kind of, you know, put this picture into perspective. Just this past weekend, we had 2 movies released. We had A Star is Born with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, and Venom. Lady Gaga's fan base were making fake social media accounts to knock the Venom movie and say it's a bad movie to get people to go see Lady Gaga's movie. I mean, that's a small scale of what we're seeing, but in theory, it's the same as what we're seeing ISIS in Russia and China do, where they're making these bot accounts where they're saying, hey, you should be voting Trump because Hillary's crooked, or hey, you should be voting Hillary because Trump is crooked. And it really does take an effect on people, because we kind of live in an age where we see these headlines, we react to it, and I can't believe Becky did this, or I can't believe the US is doing this, and then we stop and go, oh, I just acted out without thinking.
Right.
And it affects people. And how are we seeing this affect U.S. on a global scale, or even just the world on a global scale?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, so for example, the Russians or the Chinese. A lot of people actually forget the Chinese have launched something called the Voice of China, which will be the world's largest broadcaster. It's going to be over 15,000 publicly funded broadcaster. They're taking all their state-owned radio and TV. And Xi Jinping, this is his legacy now. He understands his information war, and the real, to get to the point of what you're saying about real consequences. I mean, they are using bots and machine learning and artificial intelligence. You think you're interacting with a real person and you're going back and forth, but that's actually something that's programmed. And what they're trying to do, which is really interesting, is they don't just want you to consume content. What they're trying to do is behavioral impact. They're trying to get you to do something. Maybe participate in a protest that was designed just to sort of divide.
Yes.
Or it was to get you to vote in a certain way, as you mentioned. Or in the cases of China, it's to get you to, a lot of times what they're doing is they are making it seem that what we're doing abroad as Americans is a conspiracy, or it's part of this larger thing of nefarious intentions. Even though we're doing things to help folks, we're doing things like in North Korea to try to bring peace on the Korean Peninsula, they'll put out stories which are sort of saying, look, that's not what it is. Americans are trying to start a war on the Korean Peninsula. Americans are trying to do X, Y, and Z. And so it hurts us abroad.
Yeah.
And I think, so part of it is first understanding what they're trying to do, and then, getting together to do something about it. So, I was talking to Deeanna earlier. I wrote this book last year called Digital World War, which is where the title comes with Yale University Press. And one thing I found in it was called, about social media, is the 1-9-90 model. So what was the 1-9-90 model? That means that for all of us that use social media, what I found on social media is that 90% of people on social media that use it, they are just consumers of social media, like myself. I'm reading stuff, I'm tweeting, I'm using Facebook, I'm messaging my friends. That's the bulk of people. But 9% of people are what we call curators. And they share content. Those are the people that we think of as key influencers. They actually will, they're putting out all these stuff in our news feeds, whatever you're using. They're putting out all these articles. People tend to read them, right? Yeah. 1% of people are what we call content creators. Those are people creating original content. Now, what we find on social media is if you're in the 1 or 9%, you're super influential.
Really?
And this is where they're pouring a lot of energy into putting bots and artificial intelligence. Most of us I think of it as a 90%, we're on the sidelines. I'm sort of a passive consumer. I read stuff, I think, maybe I'll send something to somebody, but the 1 and 9 are starting to move the needle, and that's where they're putting all their energy.
Interesting. So guys, we're going to leave you on a cliffhanger right there. We'll have more with Dr. Ullah after this commercial break, so stay tuned because we're going to be wrapping up this very interesting conversation after this commercial break. Welcome back, everybody, to the Mountain Morning Show. We are in a conversation with Dr. Ullah talking about this kind of world war on social media. So we're just going to throw it back to them on the couch with Deeanna Price, of course. So we were talking about social media and influencers, and I want to say it's funny how impressionable influencers are on social media. I mean, a couple of years ago, we saw the Kylie Jenner lip trend where people were sucking on a cup to get their lips to look like Kylie Jenner, and it's like, why would we do this? Well, because people want to be internet famous. They want to be as, recognizable as Kylie Jenner. And that is very, can be used against us, and it is used against us. I mean, how are we seeing people be fake influencers or being used as an influencer to push a certain agenda?
Well, I'll give you one big example. So I lived abroad for many years, and I did my doctoral work in South Asia and the Middle East. So a lot of people don't know, but the biggest person on Twitter in the Middle East, if you were asking me who's the biggest person on Twitter from the Middle East, I would have guessed a soccer player or a singer, or the Kylie Jenner of of Lebanon. But actually, the person that's the biggest following on Twitter is this extremist religious cleric based in Saudi Arabia. He has 20 million followers on Twitter, and he's a big driver of why young people get up and join ISIS. Now it's shocking to me because it's like, wait a minute, this person that can't travel to the U.S. or North America because they're on the do not travel, they're on a travel ban, they can't go to Europe, but yet sitting in their room, they can move the needle. And just to give you a sense of like the Twitterati, you talked about Twitterati, the Kardashians and others.
Yeah.
So this guy, Mohammed Al-Arafi, is ranked number 58 in the world, right underneath Ed Sheeran, and right above Hillary Clinton. So you can talk, I mean, super influential, and yet he's in literally out of his house is able to move the needle. He has this army of fanboys. And so this is the thing, and he's putting out stuff like the Robert Frost poem. He'll put out that Robert Frost poem about the road not taken.
Yeah.
And he'll just show that, and he'll just, and people know what he's talking about. Go do something in Syria and Iraq. Or he'll put out a bushel of apples. He'll just put a picture, and he'll say the caliphate is bountiful. And so these kind of things, right, again, it's very subtle, doesn't violate any terms of service. And that's kind of this new wave of what's going on social media. This is what I call the weaponization of memes and tweets.
And you know, the outreach that this person has, where I could have social media and I could be reaching someone in, I don't know, India that I don't know anything about, but they could be like, you know, I love Conrad, everything he does, I want to be like. That's scary to think that anyone would want to use those words.
Of course.
But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, there's even, you know, to a lesser degree, you know, certain people I follow on Twitter where they're like, I have this thought, and I'm like, I kind of think that way too. And you tend to gravitate towards people who you do align yourself with. And again, you're saying pushing the needle. This guy is staying in a room, and yet he's reaching 58 million people. I mean,
so you know, he's 20 million people on Twitter.
20 million on Twitter.
Million.
Okay.
He's number 58 in the Twitter
That's what it was. Yeah.
But you know, and then Conrad, that's why the work I've been really passionate about the work that I do. I mean, I get to do the fun stuff of being here to talk to you, but it's all these people at the U.S. Agency for Global Media. It's 4,000 journalists. We produce in 59 languages original content all around the world, and people know Voice America, Radio Free Europe. A lot of people don't know our other networks, Office of Cuba Broadcasting, Radio Free Asia, and the Middle East Broadcasting Network. But we're reaching 340 million people every week, and across digital, radio, and TV. And we're telling America's story. Yeah. And I walk, every time I walk to my office, I walk by our wall of fallen journalists. We lost 3 journalists this year, just this year, and you know, it just reminds me of how important this is. Not, you know, I sometimes lose sight of the fact that, you know, I'm on social media, you see all the noise, you want to unplug, but we have journalists out there putting their lives on the line to send something out on social media in areas, whether in Cambodia, Vietnam, under pressure, in Syria, in Iraq. And so it just, you know, what I get excited about coming here to talk to you is to get others, your viewers, others interested to say, hey, how can we help in this fight? Because we all as Americans have to participate.
One thing I do want to touch on is paid advertising. Because I was saying, I had a Twitter when it first came out back in 2008 or 2009. I remember following 2 people, because those were like the only 2 people I knew on Twitter. And back then, it was kind of this, you know, man, woke up today feeling grumpy. And like, that was it. And now I just made a Twitter for the first time in 8-9 years. And I'm seeing all these paid advertisements, and that's trying to influence me to get me to follow these people. We're seeing paid advertisements as a huge way to get people to think, you know, fake news or something, or persuade them. How do you guys see paid advertisements affecting social media? And this just isn't on Twitter, this is also on Facebook too.
Yeah, so paid advertising, you're exactly right. It's basically revolutionized it's the new business model. And what it means is that a lot of people will say to me like, oh, I want to build up my following, my audience. I'm following 2 people, I want to get to 10. Look, the world of organic audiences is gone to the most part. It's basically paid advertising, it's placements, it's what we call targeted audiences. So now, because they're collecting all this data, all the companies are collecting data, they know every piece of the customer journey, right? And they're sort of feeding us, sort of like Amazon is collecting all this data where you're like, wow, I could use that backpack. Oh wait, I could use that pair of shoes. Like they're directing stuff directly now to customers based on their preferences, and that's all paid advertising. And so it's becoming more and more nefarious. Now people are getting disenchanted with that, and they want to go to platforms where there's no advertising. The problem is like Snapchat. They had to redo their business model because otherwise you can't survive in this market.
You have to monetize somehow.
Yes.
And unfortunately, paid advertisements are a great way of monetizing your platform.
That's right.
Unfortunately, it does come down to whoever's the biggest bidder does get the biggest say.
That's right. And they are, and so news organizations are now getting placement. They'll place ads. I mean, the hard thing, the bigger question, and what you're getting at here is that there's so much noise on social media. We,
Yeah.
on average, on social media, see about 1,200 ads per day.
That's insane.
It's crazy. It's like, well, we're getting to the point where we can't tell the difference between an ad and what's not an ad. What's a real news story, what's not a real story. And by the way, if I had my iPad and I show you, the artificial learning and machine learning artificial intelligence is so good now, I could show you a video of your parents and a fake video made of your parents, and you wouldn't be able to tell that it's fake. I mean, it's gotten that good.
Oh, yeah.
So pretty soon we're gonna see videos, we're like, oh my gosh, so-and-so said this, but it was generated through machine learning.
Yeah, I know there was a case a couple months ago about deep fakes. I'm not going to get into the specifics about it, but it's insane what people are doing with technology to persuade people or to even get people to join their side. It's absolutely insane. What is the most affected social media, or probably the most influential social media that you see being attacked? Is it one of the big threes with Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, or is there something more subtle like a Snapchat where it's almost easier to infiltrate that?
Yeah, I actually think that, so there's been a lot of attention on Facebook and Twitter, but I actually think the newer platforms are where, so they're always like a step ahead. And so like there's a platform called Saraha. I don't know if you've
never heard of
it. Okay, so this is interesting. Saraha, which is now in 20 countries, including the US, a faster growing app than Snapchat.
Okay.
It's among young people. If you ask any millennials or Gen Z, they all love this app. It's sort of a teen app, which is called an honesty feedback app.
Okay.
So it's basically say like, look, Conrad, hey, I really like your shoes. Or it could be like, hey, Conrad, I wish you had a different color shirt on, right? It's like your old school high school bulletin board.
Okay.
Like Jimmy's shorts stink. And so so that was the reason designed. And now it's become used for bullying and other things. But we find that youth love it. It's very organic in terms of it's become the new Snapchat. And this is where these nefarious actors are saying, oh, wow, we can reach youth. They have all this purchasing power. Nobody's studied it right. Now, Facebook's putting all these restrictions now to try to limit their ecosystems being polluted. So it's like Saraha, Riot, all these new Telegram. These are the new platforms that are getting a lot of currency among young people.
Okay.
And that's where they're infiltrating.
All right, guys, we're going to do a quick break right now. We'll be back with more Dr. Ullah after the break. Very interesting, so stay tuned for more. All right, guys, we have to wrap up the show. We're having a super interesting conversation with Dr. Haroon Ullah about social media and this world war on social media. I wish I could keep talking, but I don't want to spoil his talk that he's giving, so we're going to do a quick wrap up. Where can people find out more information about your lecture that you're putting on?
Yeah, absolutely. You can come either to the Utah Council for Citizen Diplomacy. You can also come to usagm.gov. We'd love to have as many people there. It's going to be very interactive. Hopefully I'll be provocative. But one thing we're working on, because viewers might be asking, how can they help in this? We're working a lot on news integrity. And so we're working on how do you get, it's like a rotten tomato for news. How can you get scoring to help you make sense of disinformation, misinformation, and help in the fight? So come tonight, Westminster College.
That's
Westminster
right, 7
College.
p.m.
7 p.m.
at the Jewett Center for Performing Arts is where you'll find us.
I mean, you guys will not want to miss out. We are talking to Dr. Ullah, and it is super, super interesting what he has to say, so check it out tonight, Westminster College. We have to wrap up the Mount Morning Show, guys. Stay tuned for PCTV Reports at 9 a.m., hosted with me.